and welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy. This is the Ask Videomail for the week of November 11th, 2013. Welcome to the site to you new members, and welcome back to the old. The Ask Videomail is your chance to get your question in character animation or performance answered in a video, just like this one, but I need your question if I'm going to answer it. So please send your questions to webmaster@KennyRoy.com. I go through all the questions and I answer the ones that I think will help the most people. There is no such thing as a stupid question, and it is the best way to get the most out of the site. Seriously, welcome. I'm glad to have you here. You probably have seen a lot of the things that have going on KennyRoy.com, namely the Anim Gym. I'm very excited and proud of how much work is going on in the Anim Gym, and I think that it's probably the best place for people who are really trying to hunker down and start learning the right way. I really feel like it's the best thing to do. But I wanted to say one little thing about the Anim Gym is that the tests are they're designed to be short tests. They're designed to be, you can bang it out in like a couple nights. If you have a full-time job, you can get it done in maybe one weekend. But you should be doing a lot more if you have time. The whole 10,000 hours thing that you've probably heard about mastering any art or any craft really applies to animation as much as anything else. My illustration teacher in school told me that everyone has 10,000 bad drawings in them, and all you have to do in order to just get to the good ones is just get all those 10,000 bad ones out. It's almost like there was like a stack of drawings inside, and you just have to, there's great drawings underneath those, but you just got to get them out of the way, and then there's some good drawings down there. And so I really love that presentation of how just much practice really factors into what we do. So that being said, thank you for being a part of the Anim Gym, and the webcasts are just going to continue, and we're going to keep on doing just awesome stuff in there, and I'm looking forward to more and more and more work. So please keep it up, you guys. You're doing great. CTN is this week. It is starting on Friday, and it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Something always comes up, makes it so that I can't go all 3 days. I'm going to try to be there for 2, but I will be at CTN. So if you're there, especially if you're there all 3 days, or if you are there for 2 days, then you will see me. I might have to take 1 day off though, and take care of some things that have happened here at the studio. But it's very good news. I'll let you know what's happened here at the studio. If it pans out, it could be fantastic. So just wish me luck on that, I guess. I'll leave it at that. We shouldn't do too much news, just so that these you don't have to chew through too much of the fat to get to the Ask Videomail question. So without further ado, check this week's out. Of course, when I say that, it's supposed to work. Here we go. Cool. Another great question from Nicole. Nicole is awesome at sending in great questions. I really appreciate that, Nicole. So I wanted to just remind you as well that if you send in an Ask Videomail question, you get a free day added to your account. So send in the questions so that you can start accumulating that time. Some people have sent in 10, 15 questions, and that's all free time. We're just giving it away. So go ahead and send those in. But back to the question. This is actually a concept that I pushed. I haven't really pushed it in a long time, so I kind of wanted to, and it was in a lecture as well. It was in the pantomime lecture. So I haven't said it in a long time or in an Ask Videomail topic, so I wanted to kind of go over it. The concept as I like to describe it is the gesture is the transition. And this is a really nice way to switch back and forth between gesturing and hitting pose-to-pose animation, and using kind of the smoothing nature of gestures to make your transitions look really good. So to answer the second part of the question first, the way you balance it is you do that. You alternate back and forth. You use the gesture as a transition, and then a small patch of just hitting pose to pose, gesturing and then hitting that pose, right? Or the end of your gesture is that pose, basically, and then using gestures in the transitions as the transitions, like full, complete gestures that allow you to transition from pose to pose. the example, this was an Ask Videomail question that was kind of pared down from a larger, from a, sort of a little bit more long-winded explanation. And Nicole said that when this was explained to her, it was a person that said, like, okay, what if you have a character that's sitting backwards and with their arms crossed, and then they're leaning forward and their arms are uncrossed? Well, instead of just going from here to here, you unfold their arms and you have them, like, touch their chin or something, and then go to that forward pose. And that's a perfect example of a gesture or an action being the transition between two strong poses. Because in reality, that's not really how we do it. We don't take a strong pose and hit it and stick it. Secondary action is how I like to push this concept of keeping the body alive and doing a lot of natural motion that keeps the audience interested and keeps the character feeling realistic. But if you don't have really a secondary action, or their character's not holding anything, or they're not really doing anything, then this is the other way. So that would be the one example of how to do it. Another way to do it is a lot more of what you would consider sort of like a standard gesture being a transition. So, for instance, if you have a gesture that you've chosen and you're animating that gesture, then put that into as the transition instead, and then find a strong pose to end on a stronger pose than what would be the end of that gesture. Okay, so example is you have somebody that's kind of standing back, and your idea is you want them to point at the person and say, "I know you killed the mayor," right? Well, instead of, and this would be your natural instinct, to like hit it and like then start really working this pose, working all the angles, working like silhouette to camera, all the positive space, all the negative space, you start really working this pose. But is that really how it works? Sometimes, yeah, sure. I'm not saying this is not a blanket rule, but sometimes you might get that, but for the most part, not really, right? So if you want to feel a little bit more realistic, then "I know you killed the mayor," and then just sitting here, and this is now like my new pose, and you're sitting there awkwardly trying to get out of that, or even worse, you get out of it while the other person's talking, therefore distracting kind of the eye away from the other character, whatever the case may be. Use this, if you're sure about this pointing gesture, use it as the transition, right? So you have the person standing back, then you take that gesture, put it into the transition, and come up with an even stronger but more natural and realistic pose that could be the end pose, all right? So what do we use? We always say that you need to center your motions, center it in the hips, also center your body language in the hips, all right? So compositionally, and in terms of silhouette, what is a little bit of a stronger end pose? Well, maybe not the hand up like this. Maybe it's all body language, completely towards the person. My body's angled. I'm way over the front of my feet, and I'm showing that I'm not afraid of them, and I know exactly what I just said, and I'm getting in their face a little bit about this. And if I finish right here, and I'm standing at them, and I'm looking at them like this, then you know what? This is a lot stronger, isn't it? It's a lot more realistic. Right? So then you don't just go from here, "I know you killed the mayor." You don't just do that, or I think I was like this. Then you put that gesture in the transition like this. Very, very, very simply. It's kind of hard to perform, but here we go. "I know you killed the mayor." Like that. Okay? So we got that in, and it was a nice way to kind of like come out of that. Come out of this pose, and in fact, if you kind of like use it to anticipate it and land into that final pose, that could be even better. Of course, when you're performing it, it's a little bit different than when you can animate it, because you can control a lot at once. I've said many times before, and I repeated it, especially in my reference lecture, about how you need to take multiple takes of your reference over and over and over and over, but take like one thing from each take. A single take is not going to have everything that you want in it. So when I'm performing it for you right now, just take one thing from what I just did. And I don't have the benefit of being able to watch this back and then take more and more and more and more from it. But at any rate, enough excuses. Let's try it again. I know you killed the mayor. 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 One more. I know you killed the mayor. Okay, so there's enough in there that I would be able to watch that back and take just one thing. Remember, just take one little thing. Maybe it's the timing of how I come out of this folded arms and kind of like body position away from the bad guy, the villain there. That's in one take. How my hand like comes up with the speed of this, or maybe just this kind of like strong silhouette. This really, really kind of like almost iconic pose that I have right here, right? Maybe how in another take as I'm moving forward, how much that arm kind of brings that shock wave of energy through my body, up my spine, neck, and head, as I kind of like gesture that way. The speed, maybe the spacing on that step forward, the head nod in another take. Remember, just taking one little thing from each take. But at any rate, going back to the question, so that is putting the gesture, or I think it said pulling the gesture into the transition. I can't remember how it was phrased in the question. But what I like to call it is the gesture is the transition. If you mix that up, then you'll get a really nice balance of that realism, but also sort of that pose to poseness that gets a lot of mileage. That method of animating really gets you far. Okay. It's not like layered animation where you kind of are sort of fighting and working for every single frame you get. Pose to pose, there's those really, really awesome poses that kind of make you chuckle, and you can hold them for 20 frames. Obviously you get a lot more mileage out of that, but you just alternate back and forth. It's kind of I'm kind of tempted to come up with an example of how you could do the transition in the gesture and then go back to pose where it's well, actually, you know what? Here's how it relates. What you need to do is you need to make it so that if you are going pose to pose and you're ending on the last like pose of a gesture, meaning your transition is going to have to come like sort of like out of nowhere, then all you need to do is just make sure that that pose that you're hitting like has a reason to exist, has an emotional reason. Like a good example is this. If I said, man, I know you killed the mayor, and then I end on this pose, and then they say, well, actually, it was your sister, right? It was your sister. And I believe them, okay? Then I might come out of this and go into a new pose, and there might not be, there would just be a normal transition if the new pose that I'm going to has like an emotional reason, a subtext reason, a sort of like second level reason, whatever it is, and some sort of emotional reason that it should exist in the scene. Okay, so if I put my head in my hands and I transition from the strong thing to putting my head in my hands, then yeah, that you would have like a normal transition to that, because if you cram, a gesture into that transition, then you're stepping on that emotional choice, that performance choice of going to this right here. And this has a reason for being like this and for being static, right? Because if I'm really upset, I'm going to have my hand in my head in my hands, and I'm going to stay there. So there's a very good reason for it to exist. Does that make sense? All right. So here's a perfect example of a good balance of the gesture is the transition, and then doing just like a normal transition from pose to pose, and it being for a very specific emotional reason or like a subtext reason. I know you killed the mayor. No, your sister killed the or some fancy transition. You just really want it to kind of just like live and get in there. And it doesn't mean that you're ignoring like animation fundamentals. You want to kind of come out of that a little bit of, with anticipation and follow a nice arc, and then maybe overshoot it just a little bit and settle, right? So I hope that makes a lot of sense. The method is very simple, but it takes a lot of practice. And so what I think you should do, this could be your assignment. If you are working on a shot right now that has like an emotional transition or any transition, like a physical transition, then try to put this in there right now. This is even short enough to put into an Anim Gym assignment. Even though the topic doesn't lend itself to this right now, that's fine. You can do your own 48 to 72 frame test that incorporates this concept. Also, another good thing that you can do, a little bit more homework. By the way, I didn't tell you this, but I'm going to try to give you a little bit more specific assignments that you can use to apply the video mails that I've given you, because downloading the Maya files is great, listening to it and taking notes or saving it for later, whatever you do is great as well, but I'm trying to give even more specific ways you can utilize this knowledge just past clicking play once. Okay, so another thing that you can do is look back on all of your animation that you've done so far. And if you haven't done a lot of animation that's performance work, go on like 11 Second Club and look at all of the entries and see if there is a moment when you could have in your animation, or they could have, put the gesture in the transition instead, and then ended up on a better end pose that tells a better story, is more emotionally connected, maybe is even stronger than the gesture pose that they had to begin with, and fits in better with the scene. And at the end of that exercise, I think you'll have a lot higher understanding. Remember, I always say that critiquing animation is a very selfish process. You think that, like, hey, I'm not going to critique their animation because I've just, I don't have, what am I, made of time? I don't have time to help other people with their work. I got to work on my work. Wrong. It actually helps you just as much, if not better, than it helps them. Okay? Because you have to basically make your thoughts concise. You have to describe what it is you see that's wrong with work. And in doing so, you actually just you filter out all the crap in your workflow that is just making it difficult, and you get right down to the nugget, right down to the root of the issue. Okay, that's a fantastic skill to start cultivating. Okay, so please take that under advisement. I'd love it if you did those assignments. At least, if you can't make an animation that incorporates this right now, at least look at other people's work and check it out, okay? That was an awesome question. Thank you for sending it. Please send more to webmaster@kennywood.com. I'm looking forward to reading a lot more of those, and I'm way looking forward to CTN. It's going to be fantastic. Please do not be shy. Please do not be shy. Okay, it just really makes me sad that sometimes people say, like, hey, I saw you at that thing, but I didn't want to come up because you looked busy. I'm not busy. Come up. Say hi, all right? Good luck with your animation. As always, rock on.